Welcome to ReReview, where we watch movies from our past with a perspective from today. Your hosts are Matt, Bobby, and Austin, and we love the films from our youth, so we're taking a look back to see if they still hold up. On this episode, we are discussing V for Vendetta. It was released in 2005, directed by James McTeague, stars Hugo Weaving, Natalie Portman, and Rupert Graves. This movie is an action film if you watch the trailer, but probably not. Now, this is a fair warning. We're spoiling a 19-year-old movie, so if you haven't seen it, we will be revealing key plot points. We ran through and actually checked out the trailer, and I thought that was kind of an important thing to think through because expectations going to this film were probably very different. I did not see this one in the theater. It was definitely later on, but did either of you get a chance to see it in the actual theaters?
I did.
Yeah, same here. I think it was honestly because of the trailer, because I had not read the graphic novel. I'm a comic book nerd, but I hadn't read V for Vendetta. Mm-hmm. I was sold on the trailer, the very trailer that we watched, and specifically the taglines that it was brought to us by the same people who did the Matrix trilogy.
Yeah, that's a pretty strong tagline.
It's very strong. So I think between that and the action, but I know like going into it, I was like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was, but I wasn't disappointed by it.
Mm-hmm. It is very different because that trailer definitely, well, it shows you a lot of key things that happen, but it was like sliced perfectly to make you think, wow, this is action packed the entire time. Me seeing it at a later point, it was one of those where I was like, what's the big deal with this movie? And then watching it, I was like, oh, I think I get why people might actually be into this. Understanding it's a story and a tale, and remember the 5th of November and our quintessential character of Guy Fawkes. You didn't read the graphic novel, did you, Bobby?
I did not. I was aware of his existence, but I did not read it.
We are all just losing our nerd cred. If we had any, I think enough people have rated some of our re-reviews to be like, these guys don't know what they're talking about.
I think I was more interested in like Spider-Man and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Captain America.
Well, I think one of the first things I was going to ask is how do you feel about the design of the character of Guy Fawkes? Like, how did you like the costume?
Was it an existing design or was it made for the movie?
No. I mean, it's. I won't call it like, because if you look at the graphic novel, especially like the hat, like if you look at him, he looks like a pilgrim. Because I mean, if you think about it, that's more in line with the design of Guy Fawkes himself.
Right. I did think it was funny how his wig, like he had like the bangs,
yeah,
like
the missing Beatles member. Yeah. I mean, I think it really works. Watching it this time, I was paying a lot of attention to the details. Like I love like the fabric that they used for like his coat or whatever. And it's a very basic. I mean, it kind of reminds me a little bit of like, it's like a little bit Luke Skywalker. Like now I'd probably say it looks more like Kylo Ren. Like if you added like the big belt around it and gave him a hoodie, he'd look fairly close to Kylo Ren. But I think, you got the black suit, got the white mask, the hair, and thankfully he didn't wear the hat too much. But when he did, I think silhouette wise, it looked good. And obviously it's become iconic since then.
Yeah.
Yeah. The silhouette in particular kind of standing out as a result.
I thought he was going to be naked because it was like they kept doing that silhouette of him naked coming out of the fire. And be like, remember me? They'll be like, no, man, don't do it.
I love these ideas sometimes, Bobby, from you, because I'm like, wait, there's an element of this film where you thought there was going to be just naked fireman multiple times over.
I mean, they kept showing that one silhouette. So I was like, is this the silhouette we want to remember? Him naked standing in front of the fire?
Well, as we get introduced to the character and we get this overly poetic, verbose, vivacious vernacular. I wrote down just hearing Hugo Weaving and thinking about, again, all that Matrixy goodness. And then I was also thinking Lord of the Rings, because why not?
Yeah, his cadence is so good.
That's what I was going to say. How, knowing that we don't ever really see him. I mean, we do at one point, still quote unquote in makeup, but being hidden behind the mask. And I think we learned, or at least I did from both of you, that it was someone else who was behind the mask originally. I feel like Hugo did a great job.
I mean, I was like picturing like something kind of like the Mandalorian, where it's like a team of people. Like there's the actor, and then there's a bunch of stunt guys.
I do feel like, and this is probably like going to, especially nowadays in the age of, CG and, furthering usage of AI and everything in filmmaking. Like, I think that there is a language that comes out, body language that comes out through the costume. Like there's this whole ongoing battle of directors and actors that don't want their face covered. What was it? The whole reason why the Green Goblin in the Spider-Man movie, Sam Raimi was like, I have to see his eyes.
Yeah.
If I can't see his eyes, I can't see emotion. I'm like,
Right.
motherfucker, Darth Vader existed before this.
Right.
You can't tell me you have to see eyes to get emotion. Body language sells so well, especially if you come from, things like stage, where there's somebody way back in the back who might not even hear everything that's being said. You have to amplify your emotion and sell it through body language. So I think that in that sense, just having somebody in the suit doesn't always work. I was watching a documentary of all things Star Trek Voyager the other day, and they were talking about how there was actually an original Captain Janeway before the one that we got, Kate Montague or whatever her name is. There was an original one. They actually filmed the whole ass pilot episode with her in it. And I think it was the director, was talking about how like she just didn't really sell the fact that she owned the bridge of the ship, with body language.
Right.
She spoke all the lines and she acted just fine, but she seemed timid on the bridge. She didn't seem like she was the captain of the ship. She ended up getting let go, and they brought in Kate, and she just completely sold it. And you look at the footage side by side, you're like, yeah, the body language really does something that words can't. And I feel like the same thing applies to these, especially the fully covered, costumes like V and, Din Djarin and the Mandalorian and Darth Vader and all these ones where it's like, yeah, you have to be able to sell it. And I feel like unless you're really good at movement, and that's part of your training, I feel like having the actors there, it really helps portray the character whenever you don't have the words being spoken, right? And so, yeah, they could have had a stunt double, be behind it the entire time, and the actor wouldn't have to be uncomfortable, because like most things, if you're covered head to toe, which in this one, they have a reason why he's covered head to toe. He's very much Darth Vader, right? He got fried. He got deep fried and everything. So like he had to be covered head to toe. That can't be comfortable. Even his head's completely covered. So you don't even get like the heat going out of the top of your head. So I'm sure it was miserable in that suit. It would be very easy for Hugo Weaving to be voiceover only. But then what is lost in the process when you have either a different actor who doesn't do the actual dialogue later, doing different motions than what the vocals are really selling, or a stunt double who, may or may not have the training for it, just looks like a robot up there, right? Like they're just doing basic motions and it's not really selling him. Even that speech at the beginning when he's really kind of getting into the V speech, he gets excited. And even if you muted it, you could feel that excitement. And I feel like somebody just in the suit might not be able to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good breakdown of that expectation that we get set, because we do see both fighting choreography, but also the little moments that end up being portrayed through those movements. I'm thinking of in particular when he's sitting down with Evie's character and they're watching the movie, and him doing that thing that you do with friends when you're showing them a movie that you love and they're hanging out with you and they've never seen it, so you're trying to gauge their reaction the whole time. Like all that was coming across very, very well. We get to talk about Evie and Natalie Portman, who we're introduced to, because we didn't even paint the society that they're living in, but it's some post-futuristic world where an epidemic, which felt very pandemic-like, occurred, and the U.S. is no longer the same. The U.S. is in civil war, but Britain, or at least, the U.K. has its own authoritarian government that got established at some point. So there's a curfew in place, and Evie is going out to meet with Dietrich, who's Stephen Fry, and she gets caught outside of curfew, and we get to meet the Fingerman, which I think we didn't have a history on why they're named that, other than they're being disgusting. And that's really our first introduction to V coming in to quote unquote save the day. And one of the first things I thought of when we go through that, because he saves her and that's all great, and we get the vivacious, victorious, vanquishing quadruple V monologue. But he meets Evie and saves her, but then decides to involve her in seeing the shenanigans he does when he blows up. Which statue was it? It was almost like not the cap. Was it a Capel statue? Either way, he's doing his shenanigans. And one of my first things to think was, he immediately puts her in danger. Now, obviously, that sets everything up that we go through for the rest of the film. And he eventually cares for this character, but it was like, why do this to her in the first place?
If I wanted to put on my tinfoil hat,
put it on.
Who's saying that this is where it starts getting deeper than it probably should, but who's saying that happened by accident? Maybe he already knew who she was, because if you think about the sheer amount of coincidences that happened, that she, was late for her, she was past curfew, that was it, Three Fingermen found her all of a sudden, and that V happened to be there at the very same time, all coincidentally kind of interlocked with each other. Whereas I could easily argue that he was a very lonely person who was looking for a kindred spirit, and potentially could have maybe he could have made it so that the Fingerman actually found her. Like, what if he threw something, made a sound, they caught attention to her, and was able to
tip them off about a,
because you're right, Austin. Like,
breaker. It's
not really responsible to involve her in that. Yeah, he was saving her, but in the same time, did it have to go that far? And even if she had been caught, would it have been bad for her? Right? Like, if he had not brought her on the roof, if they even had seen that, I don't know if that's where they had seen him or not. But if she had just been saved, then would she have gotten black bagged and jailed or punished in some way just by being saved?
That's a good point, because, well, did he kill those initial?
You mean like had he had been saved and then like ran away right after?
Yeah, because eventually, I don't think I should have said the unalive word instead. Whatever. He took out the set of the three police, but at that point, it wasn't the violence we end up seeing later, right?
Yeah, I think he went out of his way for it not to be, because how do you have a blade and you use the blunt end, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's obviously very well trained in them, so if he wanted to end them, then he could have very easily.
Yeah, a bit surprising. So, speaking of Evie, how do we feel about Natalie Portman's performance as Evie?
I thought she did pretty good. And that scene where she was shaving her head, like, I thought that it legitimately looked like she was like sad about that moment. Like, she didn't want her hair to be cut.
It almost makes it sound like you think it wasn't planned. Like she wasn't ready for it.
I know that it was planned, but like the trick about that kind of thing is, it's like a one take thing, you got to get it right. And she I thought she did a good job, like she was like crying. And to me, like, it's that scene sold for me. Like, I thought that it really looked like she didn't want her hair cut.
I do think it's funny because if you look at her resume as a whole, she's obviously a very good actress. She has, this is 12 years after Leon. She's obviously been in a lot of stuff since then. Obviously Black Swan, and she has an excellent resume. I think the reason why I was more surprised that she gave a good performance was because of Star Wars, unfortunately. I don't think that, even though she was still young, I think she was still like 16, 17, I think, the first movie. Like, that obviously wasn't her best work. And I don't think seeing what she did before and what she did after, I don't think it was her fault. And so I'm not surprised by the performance she gave here. I think the only thing that threw me off in her performance throughout the movie was there was times when she was kind of inconsistent in her tone, how she was doing things. And more so, especially when you find out Evie's backstory, it's kind of hard to gel with who she is before meeting V. Like, she's lost her entire family, but you couldn't really tell that just from, you know, her character outside of her conversations with V, right?
You're thinking of what you said earlier. I mean, she's probably so disconnected from life, and V was following her, probably ties into why those initial scenes, they were both kind of getting ready in front of a mirror. Two sides of the mirror, and he probably was stalking the hell out of her. Damn it, V. So how about their actual relationship as we move through this film? Because we go from getting to know her, protecting her, to deceiving the heck out of her, talking about the shave head scene, and just what is it, not torturing her and doing all these terrible things to basically try to free her mind. There's a Matrix thing for you.
Stripping her.
Yeah. To eventually leading to her making the most important decision around his grand plan to sow chaos. V loves her, and she never says, I love you back. Right. So how do we look at this very twisted relationship?
I mean, I always ask this about some of these movies or whatever, like, was a romantic relationship really necessary for the story?
Was a mass kiss necessary?
Well, like, and I guess that's where, like, one, keeping in mind that this movie very much is self-aware about the Count of Monte Cristo, and that it very much is a play on that kind of story.
Sure.
I mean, you could even go back to like Iliad and stuff like that, as far as, you know, Homer's work, in order to find comparisons as well. But to me, like, the love story that potentially happens isn't nearly as important as the individual character stories. Like, I don't need him falling in love with her for him to at the same time find his humanity through her, through the process of the movie. And at the same time, her losing fear through everything that does happen doesn't require a romantic relationship in the process. So them getting to that level, I don't feel is necessary. It didn't distract me from the story as much as I think other ones do. So I'm okay with it, but it didn't add anything that was really necessary from my point of view.
I definitely agree with that, because it's the reason I'm asking the question. It feels, it's not that it's fully out of place, but just off enough. Because you're absolutely right. You can feel through their characters doing the exact same things without landing in that particular zone. You know, knowing everything that's happening through the process. We have the story with Guy Fawkes, the idea of V going through and is really undoing the society that they have. We also have now Finch, Stephen Rea, who is the police officer with the gut sense, is what I'll call it, who is trying to figure out what in the hell is going on and learns to kind of question his masters. How did you feel about them playing against, like, we're learning what's happening with V and him trying to figure it out? I think, Bobby, you made this reference to be like, oh, this feels a little bit of Usual Suspects. With the way he was approaching things. How did you feel that? I
thought it was funny how he did his whole monologue about how, like, I could see the future, I know what's gonna happen, and then they're like, okay, what's gonna happen? He's like, I don't know.
The perfect prediction. Did you like Finch as a character?
I mean, I did, and I liked the way they went with it. I liked the one scene where V was like, you're the one we need. We need someone on the inside who's trying to find the truth and not worried about other stuff.
But this is the cynic in me or whatever. So one, I do like his character, but it does feel like in this room full of monsters, it feels weird that he's in the position that he's in. Cause, like, if you really think about it, he's one of the council of, like, what was it, 6 or 7?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, he is in the party, right? Which, by the way, fun fact, did not know this until I read it. The political party that they're all part of is called Norse Fire. That is the political party. And I really like that.
Okay.
I'm very interested in knowing where that would have potentially come from. But anyways, he's almost too good of a guy. like to be in that, amongst, he's, the hen in the, the fox house almost.
Right. Nice.
I do think that
he should have noticed something earlier, right?
Well, here's my thing, right? From a story perspective, it makes sense. He's there to drive the plot forward, to uncover the back stuff without it being really expositional. He's supposed to be the one finding it out. But he doesn't honestly contribute to the plot. He doesn't actually help drive anything. If you took him completely out and you said that Evie was the one who was going to be uncovering all the stuff, he doesn't really do anything outside of that. It's not like the only thing he really does at the very end is he allows it to happen. He could have stopped it, but he didn't. But it's not like he triggered anything. Like, he'd always be like 2 steps too late, right? He wasn't really there to stop anything. He didn't help V and Evie with the ultimate plan in the end. He was just kind of us, right? He was kind of like the person there to kind of uncover everything. And from a story perspective, it makes sense. He's there for that to be an exposition thing without it feeling too heavy-handed, but he doesn't really drive anything either. But maybe they were like, we already got V, we already got Evie, we already got, the bad guys as a general, whatever. We can't have another main character like driving too much.
Yeah, it was funny in hindsight how like much they telegraph stuff like the coroner, and like how he kept showing up at murders like right after they happened,
making it really obvious for us. Hey, sometimes it was close to being fully spelled out without it being too much. I mean, I guess it was for you, Bobby. I still liked his performance as the cop. How did we feel about our overlord Adam Sutler, John Hurt, playing that character?
I mean, anyone who's a fan of, older movies with 1984 and everything else, it's kind of hard not to love the fact that they have him playing that role.
Hellboy he's really good in Hellboy.
I mean, he's a great actor in general.
Right.
It's interesting to think that 99% of his performance is behind a screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's just a giant head, right? He's like the Wizard of Oz. He's behind the curtain.
He's the emperor.
But he did get to play himself on the Dietrich Comedy Hour.
He did, yeah.
That was funny.
I was like, there's no way they're duping him. And they did a great job to just bring him out. Like, oh, look, it's actually him not being behind the camera.
Complete side note here. Do you think they black bagged that actor for what he did?
Yeah, probably.
They probably black bagged him, didn't they?
Yeah.
He looks too much like Sutler and he participated in that.
Or they're like, you do look a lot like me. Let's use you as a decoy.
Dude, what if they did use him as a decoy and he was actually the one at the end and Sutler was actually still around?
Well, that was actually I still felt that way when I watched the movie this time. I felt that way originally. I never believed that it was actually him. Right. And knowing that V goes through the whole tale of, telling Evie that no matter what, some things are going to change, because he basically was setting it up such that even if you don't go through with the train plot, we're taking out the big guy no matter what. So tomorrow will be different. I never believed. I assumed it was a double. I was still very surprised that Creedy took him out.
I thought that was an interesting twist. Like, I guess that was the whole point of him going to like the nursery situation and making that deal. Because it really seemed like he should have killed him at that point.
But Creedy is just kind of like, what was it? 3 times he got called out. So those 3 times were enough for him to be like, I'm angry, sir. It's your turn.
I think he knew they were all going to go against each other if it went bad.
You just corrected my earlier assumption. I completely forgot. The whole thing that started this was the fact that V got Finch to put a security detail on Creedy.
Creedy, yeah.
Which made him paranoid that he was being watched by Sutler. So that, in addition to all the shit talk that he had to go through, so technically Finch was needed for that to happen, because only Finch could have done that. So, yep, you just destroyed my whole idea that he added nothing. He he drove the whole reason why Sutler ends up where he does.
Find the one thing he added. But yeah, Creedy, being threatened for resignation, decides, well, I guess it's time to end you, boss.
Well, I'm assuming like he knew he was the type who's like ambitious and wanted to take over and probably would have at some point.
Mm-hmm. Now, I do want to run through it because it was so quintessential to have Evie's character change through this and gain her freedom. And we obviously get more backstory and understanding of what really happened to V as we go along here. How do we feel about V taking in Evie and basically deceiving her to shift the way her outlook on everything that was happening? Did you like the story path they wove? The toilet paper with the story about Valerie?
I mean, like, is there another way it could have been done? Like, could he have like said, hey, look, here's this anthology of books about oppression. Like, have your anger brew inside of you. Use your dark side force instead of like doing that.
I mean, I do wonder if maybe you could have done it slightly differently in the sense of she actually did get caught, for example, but he was able to get her out. But do the ends justify the means? Does all the weeks, months of torture and lack of, floor and everything else, the terrible food and the,
and basically being an abuser.
Yeah. At the end,
he hits her with, I did it because I love you.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Every day I struggled with this decision to treat you like this, but
every day you didn't give up. So what would he have done if day one she was like, yep, he's in an underground cavern. There's a bunch of yellow bricks all around it, and it's got a lot of nice masonry and stuff. What was he gonna do? You're like, well,
and he's got a jukebox.
Yeah, it was like.
Right. It seems like he said that kind of stuff to her on purpose to be like, hey, look, like, here's a way to out me. Are you going to now?
I don't know. It's really hard because, obviously, at least to the movie's credit, she didn't immediately just go like, oh, okay. She was like, you what? And like freaks out and gets pissed at him.
That
and
was
like,
really good.
It wasn't really until she went outside that I think she really kind of not necessarily forgave him, but maybe understood it a little bit, especially once she found out that, oh crap, I can't remember what her name was.
Valerie
was real. Mm-hmm. Then I think at that point, maybe she at least got it, especially when she was like, I'm not scared anymore. I'm not, she probably became the person that she probably should have been after everything that had happened to her up to that point, but she'd kind of hidden it away out of fear. And since she was freed from the fear, she was able to become who she was meant to become. But yeah, I'm definitely not kissing the person who put me in jail for months and tortured me, regardless of what the end result was.
I still think there's another way to do it.
Well, we didn't even get to a lot of VFX talk, but we do get, should I call it rain bullet time? Is that what we were seeing right there, Bobby?
Yeah, and like, what do they call those like chemtrails that the daggers have?
I
thought those were kind
let's
of
get
like
there.
a neat
yeah, it was very much like the Akira motorcycle.
So this is a great time to bring it up just because we did, from the trailer, we were presented with the action movie. So how do we feel about that quintessential action scene with its chemtrail knife movement?
I thought that was cool.
It was good, but it wasn't very well choreographed, if you asked me. Like, there was a lot of people just standing around waiting to get hit.
Sure.
Considering this is from the assistant director of the Matrix trilogy, like, I would have kind of wanted it to be like at least one step up, but maybe the nature of it being slow motion would have made it tough. Because I'm just like, okay, compare this to the Trinity sequence at the beginning of the Matrix movie, which was better. Like, if you had to erase one from history, this one or Trinity fighting the guards.
Gosh, okay, come on. It's like not even fair.
I wonder what Tarantino would have done with this movie. It seems like up his alley, the revenge whole situation.
It would have been far bloodier. I actually liked their approach to the blood shots. It wasn't too much for me.
Yeah, I think it was good. I mean, it was violent without it being like hyper violent. Like the worst it ever was for me was when Dietrich got hit and like his flesh was kind of sticking out from his mouth.
Oh yeah.
I was like, oh, everyone else getting their neck slashed, whatever. I was like, yeah, it's cool. It's like Kool-Aid going everywhere.
How, and maybe, I don't know if this is the character, how did V initially survive the barrage of bullets? Minus we know he was wearing.
I'm kind of mad they didn't have him watching Back to the Future 3.
Okay.
before it went down. I'm kind of mad. You could have went with the Fistful of Dollars movie to like that. That would have been fine too. But like, yeah, no, that knight armor, the one that was beating him up or whatever, that was not absorbing 357s and stuff like that. I'm sorry. Like I do at least understand that from a body perspective. What was her name? The Dr. Delia,
yeah.
She did explain that a result of the experimentation was that he got heightened sense of strength. He lost the sense of pain significantly. Like, so like I could see how he could survive. So as long as he was protecting his core as much as possible, but he still ended up, not making it. Spoiler.
Yeah, he was getting wrecked.
But because of all that, I think he was able to at least go on long enough to finish. So fine, but yeah, if it would have been cast iron something, I would have been a little bit more believing it, I guess.
So the revolution itself, what he creates, we have Evie making a tough decision, Finch supporting said tough decision because, his gut. Bobby, how'd you feel about getting to that point and really establishing what we see at the end of the movie is it's Viva la Revolution, British style?
I mean, I'm so used to, the red, white, and blue American style movies, I mean, it was nice to see like the tea and crumpet British version, like have the bloody hells and all that kind of fun stuff. I liked the British side of things. And I liked the Guy Fawkes history kind of stuff.
I definitely think that they did a good job establishing how they got to the end with the televised speech. I think he did that speech was really good at kind of driving that sense of why there's a problem and kind of exposing it and kind of getting people kind of hyped into it. And then this movie did a really good job on speeches and montages. Because then you had when he delivered all the costumes to the city. And you had that montage of kind of showing how it created chaos in the process. And then the final moment of like everyone converging on the square. Like it felt well set up. It didn't feel like it was just like, to Bobby's point, it didn't feel like a kind of cheesy American movie where it was just like, patriotism for the sake of patriotism or something. It's like it felt like they did a good job establishing this is a world where there is oppression, there is tyranny, and it is their fault. They allowed it to happen.
Yeah.
And so it's also equally up to them to oppose it. And not even in a violent way. Yes. It's just showing up. That's all they had to do. Yeah. They just showed up. Yeah. Non-violently.
Some of that stuff like felt familiar to me, like from history, and it did seem like to me, like from the change of quality and the footage, that there was some like found footage from real events. And like the whole, like when the cops were going against the little girl, it kind of reminded me of that, like the one historical image of like, someone putting like the Watchmen scene of somebody putting the flower, the military against the hippies, and like it just kind of felt like other historical moments that felt familiar,
like looking into a documentary.
I will say though that it's really easy to topple a government to build it back up again.
Right. I was thinking the same thing. Yes,
that's good. And they lost Big Ben. What about the tourism now? I mean, all those people from America.
It seemed like the tourism wasn't happening.
Where's the Ferris wheel? How come they didn't destroy that?
Bobby's like, more. The Ferris wheel is the symbol of oppression.
Oh my goodness. We're here. It's time to ask the question. Matt, are you recommending people watch V for Vendetta today?
Yeah, I think it's a really solid movie. I think especially considering this is one of the first movies the director did. I think that whatever direction you're coming from, it's a poignant movie. You can definitely look at it and you can see a lot of things that are, you know, entertaining to watch and hopefully something you don't have to go through. I think that all the actors did a really good job. I can't think of a single bad performance in the movie, to be honest. I think the score is really good. I think that they set up a lot of really good moments. Like the domino scene was really well done.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, at the end of the day, it's a enjoyable movie. I think the middle part drags a little bit. But I think altogether it's a good watch. I definitely recommend it.
Bobby?
I agree with Matt. I think, like I mentioned before, it's a bit different than some of the other things that I see all the time. I mean, maybe there's a huge catalog of British uprising type movies. I'd be interested to know about more of those. But I mean, all of them, I mean, I don't think Matt could have said it any better. And I agree with that. You know, I think that it had a lot of really good notes. And I think, you know, it was an entertaining watch. And I think it was a thought-provoking movie to think about, you know, what's our own politics like at this time, and what's the government doing, and what can we do about it, and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's, you know, for maybe even the conversations done afterwards, it's worth watching for.
Yeah, I'd say don't watch the trailer first, because I definitely think there is that element of it feeling more actiony than it is. You're really coming for the verbose vernacular. That
I mean, this movie is more of like, I mean, I know, how would you categorize it? It's like, it's more like I don't know.
I think it's a dystopian thriller. I'd probably say
that's a great way of describing it.
I definitely say there's definitely more eggy in the baskets than fight scenes. So
there's a certain meal that will be prepared by the ReReview team for us for breakfast.
Where's the bangers and mash? Come on.
No, I actually think that's a great way of describing this movie, because it sets you up for what you're going to go into watching it. And I think it'd be difficult to leave saying, wow, this was terrible, or I don't want to see something like this. I think lots of times we'll watch things and I'll say like, oh, this is a popcorn flick, or just something that's easy to watch. This, to me, even though I think there's elements like you mentioned the middle part, Matt, I still felt engaging. And even though it was a lot of dialogue, and the monologues to me were more than enough to pull me in and just kind of pay attention to everything that was happening. And really, you know, as it ends, want to see what happens with the rest of the revolution. But much like a lot of good things, it's good that it stopped here. Don't reopen this door. Just let this movie sit where it is. And I definitely think it's one to pick up and watch if you haven't seen it in all this time. So as always, thank you for listening. And remember, people should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.